Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Rush Outrospective. My name is Rush, and I'm your host. Having suffered an on-the-field career-ending injury, Dustin Stanton knows what adversity feels like and has made it part of his life's mission to help people realize that they're not alone in their struggles and that their struggles are all part of a larger story of success. Through Dustin Stanton's The Cabin podcast, the former Dallas Cowboy offensive lineman knows that now more than ever, people really want and need to hear the entirety of the human experience, not only the joyous moments, but the dark moments too. More importantly, Dustin hopes that people who tune in to listen will find their own permission to continue and recognize that adversity is all part of life for everyone. Dustin's entire story is a story of perseverance, courage, hope, and faith, and we're really excited about the opportunity today and look forward to sharing his story with you. And with that, it's my great pleasure to introduce Dustin Stanton, brother. Nice to see you, man. Hey, it's a pleasure to have you. We know each other through the gym, and I've always been always interested in what the journey is for an NFL player or how they start off and how they go through the process, as starting off the youth athletics and from that point on. So why don't we start off this conversation by you talking about your journey in sports?
Yeah, brother. Well, thank you for having me, man. This is awesome. I feel honored, and thank you for everything that you're doing in the world. I know you're helping a lot of people, and I just commend you for that.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah. So my story, like so many others, it's a long one, but I'll try to summarize it and kind of give the highlights of it.
Sure.
So I grew up in a small town up in Washington in the Northwest. It's like a 1-minute town.
Yeah.
I don't know, post office, gas station, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
2A high school, 180 people graduated in my class, that sort of thing. The odds of me making it out of that town and going all the way to the NFL were insurmountable. It was almost zero. I was never, growing up, I was a good athlete, I was a good student, but it was never like extraordinary. No one ever thought that I'd make it to the league, especially as an offensive lineman. But around my sophomore year of high school, I realized that I might be kind of good at football.
Yeah.
And so I decided to kind of dedicate a lot of my life to that craft and see what I could do with it. And I ended up, becoming one of the top tight ends in the state, in the nation. It was humble beginnings for sure. My nickname in high school was Noodle because I was so long and skinny. So it's just funny how everything goes. But I ended up getting a full ride scholarship to Oregon State coming out of high school as a tight end. And my sophomore year at Oregon State, I was getting ready to go. I redshirted my first year, my freshman year there. So I was getting ready to go as a tight end, and we had a lot of offensive linemen go down before that season with injuries. So the coaches came to me and said, "You're going to switch to offensive line." And man, I was devastated.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm ready to have my breakout tight end year in the Pac-12. I'm 6'6", 250 pounds, jacked, ready to go. In my mind, I'm like the ego. I'm the face of the program, catching the first downs and touchdowns and getting the girls. And now I'm going to have to be 300 pounds and block for a living. That's not what I want to do, right?
Yeah.
But, man, so I was devastated. And they gave me a week to kind of, make a decision, basically. And I was thinking about quitting. I was thinking about transferring. But, part of that process, it's a whole story and beautiful testimony, but I found God in that process, and He gave me a vision of who I needed to become, what I was to do, and I took on that challenge, and ended up in 5.5 months, gained 44 pounds of muscle, 6 pounds of fat, actually lost 0.2% body fat in the process. So it was such a God thing, and later that sophomore season, our starting tackle went down in a game. So I went in, and that was kind of the beginning of the rest of my career. I remained a starter for the remainder of my collegiate career. Became a captain and the leader of that program.
Oh, wow.
Got honors in the Pac-12 as being an offensive lineman. So it's kind of, it's crazy how life works.
Yeah.
Graduated with a degree in entrepreneurship. Went undrafted to Cincinnati So it's kind of starting at the bottom of the totem pole there. I was cut that year, went back home, kind of tail tucked between my legs, didn't know, I was expecting calls from teams. Those calls weren't coming in for a couple of months. And that was really hard for me, 'cause just sitting on my parents' couch, like training twice a day. I was staying ready, I was staying prepared, but those calls weren't coming in. My agent was doing everything that he could. Ended up, because that was so hard for me, so I ended up taking this corporate position, this high-level elite job with an HR software company, huge company in the country. I moved to Portland, quickly found out that that job wasn't what I thought it was. On paper, it was everything that I was looking for when I was done with football anyway.
Yeah.
And found out that it didn't jive with me.
Yeah.
So I hated my life at that point. I felt like I gave up on the NFL. I wasn't doing what I was passionate about or purposeful. Got a couple calls from Seattle later that season. Turned them down twice. They were postseason, playoff runs. Didn't know how long I would have a job with them, and that was the home city too of Seattle. So it was tough.
Yeah.
A month after that, Dallas called for a 2-year contract, and it was a Monday. Took the day off work to go to Dallas, work out with Cowboys, come back. I was back at work Tuesday. A week later, Dallas called me back, and they're like, "We want to sign you up."
Nice.
So quit and moved to Dallas, playing the best football of my life. I was running with the second string center guard, and we were playing the Cardinals, and had what I didn't know at the time, a career-ending injury. So fought for about a year and a half on IR, trying to come back from this injury. COVID hit, messed up a lot of different things, and I came to the realization that the knee wouldn't, it wouldn't be where it needed to be to play, offensive lineman at the highest level anymore. So.
Yeah.
So I hung them up, and then with the pandemic and everything, it kind of made sense to stay here in the Dallas area. Great place to be, great part of the country. So that kind of football brought me to Dallas, and I'm here now and just enjoying life. I got a great community. So, yeah, man, that's a little bit of the story. So.
That's crazy. There's a saying that they say, "Surprise me, God," right? Like it's like surprise me, right? Reveal yourself to me in my life in certain ways, and it seems like your journey, starting off in high school and how you start off tight end, wanting to be the premier playmaker, I guess, one of the playmakers on the team, right? And then you converted to an offensive lineman, and it led you to the NFL. I wonder if you would have stayed in the tight end position, would you be in the NFL too?
Right.
What do you think?
Right. It's crazy to think about that, right? It's like it only makes sense in reverse.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's an infinite amount of possibilities and ways that your life could go. I believe that it's kind of inevitable that this was the path that I had to go on. Right?
Yeah.
This is the path that God had for me. So I'm not sure. It's like you want to think that your work ethic and determination and integrity and drive and tenacity were there, as a tight end to continue going through. But it's like, this is the way that it needed to be.
Yeah.
For the exact story to be told and the testimony to pan out like that. So it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough to answer that question. I think this is exactly how it had to go, though, for God's ultimate plan.
See, I love that. I love the spirit in which you say that, and when you talk about that, because you found God, and He scoped your life in a certain way to make it to the pinnacle of professional sports. What are some of the things that being in athletics, being in an athletic community, what are some of the most valuable things that you've inherited from being part of that kind of environment?
That environment, especially at the highest level, in the world, you were surrounded by the best of the best. So like the elites in a field, right? In an industry. And along with that, 99% of the guys in that locker room or on that field, they want to be there. They love what they do. Like they have passion and they have a sense of purpose behind playing football.
Yeah.
It's very important to them, right? So when you mix like passion and purpose with the amount of, like I mentioned, like determination and integrity and the work ethic and drive and tenacity, like when you combine those two together, you get that elite performance. You find that full optimization of a career, of a purpose, of a path, the things that you want to create or do. And so for me, that's one of the most valuable things that I've found. It's this combination of those two things, but ultimately it's like, in the league, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's so hard to even get to the NFL, let alone remain in the NFL. It takes so much. Part of that is passion. Like you need to want to be there. The guys that don't want to be there, they'll fall out like the first week of camp, that sort of thing. So what I've learned from that, and I'm trying to take it away because I've been so passionate and purposeful with football my entire life. I started playing when I was like 9 years old, and when that season of life ends, along with it goes that passion and purpose. So it's like, how can I cultivate that same passion and purpose that I had for football into, the next thing that I'm doing. And I think that's very valuable for everyone to take into account in life in general.
You think people they live multiple lives in their journey?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think an important part about the journey and those different lives and experiences or even realities that you go through, an important part or aspect of that is the awareness. I think if you can become aware of that, you can use that to then move into like that next life that you're about to live, or that God or the universe has for you.
Yeah.
If you can take what you've learned from these different lives, different seasons or portions of life, no matter what it is, it could be a terrible season of life.
Yeah.
But you ultimately use that into the next phase.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. The seasons of life, you had these parts of your life, from, being a child in sports, and then grooming to, adolescence, and then, a young man, a young adult, and now these things in transition. Now you're here, right? What are some of the things that you go, like when you leave from the sports? A lot of people have a difficulty, with identity, self-identity, because they have, it's kind of same thing with military. So you leave the force, you leave a camaraderie, you leave these, you leave some friendships, and you transition. You leave the hero the celebrity status, the persona that you've developed over the years. What have you learned from that experience? What has it taught you?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, and I know you've experienced this with kind of your journey. The ego is a crazy thing.
Yeah.
And we need an ego to some extent to live these lives. But we can't put too much emphasis on the ego, what the ego wants. And in the league, you're making a lot of money, you're known by a lot of people, and society kind of has this weird way of putting you on a pedestal for your line of work, the thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
And it's so easy for that to go to your head, and like in my position, that came to an abrupt halt. As long as the process was it was a slow exit, I guess, from the league.
Yeah.
Meaning, I was trying to come back from the injury. I was still on contract. I was still in the building. I was still with the team on IR, on injured reserve.
Yeah.
But it was, I was on my way out.
Yeah.
And so as slow as that process was, it still came to an abrupt halt.
Yeah.
When it's over, it is over.
Yeah.
It is over. Especially for most guys. There's maybe 1 to 5% of the league who everybody knows. Everybody knows their name. And especially as like an offensive lineman, it's one of the most humbling positions to play, because no one really knows. You don't get the ball. The only time you're on TV is if you made a mistake.
Yeah.
Right? When they highlight like a holding for the offensive lineman. But, especially being like 6'6", 320 pounds, just walking around town, people, in Dallas, people will be like, "Do you play for the Cowboys?" Right? I mean,
Yeah.
anywhere you go, that goes to your head.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's who I am.
Yeah.
Like that's who my identity is.
Yeah.
And as soon as that's over, I've lost 50 pounds, so I'm still a big guy,
Yeah.
but I'm not 320 pounds, so it's not, those questions are asked less and less.
Yeah.
Even that is like, who am I really? What do I bring to the table? But yeah, the ego and identity, it's just when you, like I said, I started playing when I was 9, so I've given this thing everything that I had for so long.
Yeah.
And then that, because you finally do get to the league and it's like, oh, this is who I am. Like I am an NFL football player.
Yeah.
And then society does what society does and puts you on that pedestal, right? But it's such a that's been the hardest thing, I think, is that transition into the real world.
Yeah.
And then you talk to guys, like I'm in a former players group, and we have these conversations all the time. And you're right, it's like, you're not a part of the brotherhood.
Yeah.
You don't have that locker room. You're not with your boys every day talking about the craft that you're working on and everything that comes with that. And then the other part too is just the structure.
Yeah.
Every minute of every day is structured.
Yeah.
When you're with the team. I mean, it's literally posted everywhere in the locker room. It's on the TVs. You know what you're doing at every step of the minute, and nobody, you're not coming up with that schedule. Somebody's giving you that schedule, and so for a lot of guys, leaving, and I'm sure it's the same with the crew that you run with. It's a lot of guys struggle with that. Especially if you played for like 10 years and made millions of dollars.
Yeah.
You don't have to get up and go to work. So like some guys, for that first year to 3 years, no alarm clock, stuff like that. So it's really important to have a structure no matter who you are. But when you're making those transitional phases, go back to routines, go back to structure, make your own, take responsibility, take accountability for your life in that aspect. Yeah, I learned a lot about that process.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about myself and most importantly my faith. There's an analogy that I like that Wayne Dyer talks about. When you squeeze an orange juice comes out. That's what you expect to come out.
Yeah.
And it's like when life squeezes you, what comes out?
That's
right?
Yeah.
Like what are you really made of?
Yeah.
And that's really, I was really going through this year and a half being on IR, 1 foot in the building, 1 foot with the program, 1 foot out. And it was trying times. It was like, why me? Why am I dealing with this? Why do I deserve this? And didn't I do everything right? Like, this isn't how my career should be going. And so it took a little while for me to realize, it's not about you. It's about, for me, it's about my faith. It's about God.
Yeah.
And His story and His testimony for your life. But at the end of the day, not if, but when life squeezes you.
Yeah.
When life gets tough, because it will, it's inevitable. Who are you? Like what comes out? What are you really made of? And that's the main thing that I learned throughout that process is it is a choice.
Yeah.
You wake up every day and it is a choice who you're going to show up as.
Yeah.
Dude,
that's beautiful, dude. I like that, man, because that's like it really is that, like what when life squeezes you, what comes out, and. I totally understand where you're coming from. When we first, I used to, most of y'all don't know this, but I know Dustin from Cowboys Fit. He was training, he was rehabbing and stuff like that. And the strange part of it is, the crazy thing is I would see you and I say, hey, what's going on? What are you working on? You tell me you're rehabilitating your knee, and part of me was like, I always felt this like. Dude, this guy, he's going after his career. He got an injury. He's got to rehabilitate. There's a lot going on in your story. Trying to rehab and getting back on the playing field and stuff like that. And I would feel like I would say, dude, that guy's. I hope he perseveres. And he gets to the place. Because that's what I, as someone who's worked with athletes and stuff like that, I know what that's kind of like, training them and seeing them go through injury and stuff. And so seeing you go through that, I was like, ooh, man, let's see what's up. Let's see what happens. And now we're sitting here talking about your story and how you transcended from that experience today. So that's like, for me, I was like, all right, that's what's up,
That's amazing.
I know it is, dude. It is. You taught me a couple of stretches that needed to open up my hips and stuff like that, and I was like, All right, I take those. I still use those today. So, but
Awesome.
yeah, it's cool, man. All right, guys, this is just a brief word from our sponsors. This video series is sponsored by American Coffee and Tea. American Coffee and Tea is located at the corner of Stonebrook Parkway and the North Dallas Tollway, right next to the Shell Station in Frisco, Texas. Guys, if you pride yourself in supporting local businesses and you pride yourself in being patriotic and believe in capitalism and believe in the opportunity to forge your own pathway in your business and in life, then stop by American Coffee and Tea and support them. The staff is fantastic. They're friendly and hospitable, and you just get a sense of community and I would say harmony when you go in there. Guys, American Coffee and Tea. Today I'm drinking the cold brew. It's very good and tasty. It's robust. I love it. So make sure you stop by there when you get a chance in Frisco, Texas. Okay, so now that you've kind of you walked you kind of walked away from the game, right? What's going on in your life right now? What you got going on?
I am pursuing those entrepreneurship endeavors in
Yeah.
my life, studying entrepreneurship, studying business back at Oregon State. I am very passionate about that. I want to create things that help people ultimately.
Yeah.
And part of that is, in a weird way, part of that is like me being selfish, where I want to accumulate a certain amount of capital,
Yeah.
continue accumulating capital in order to serve and help, and put it back into service of other people. So that's like part of the entrepreneurship side,
Sure.
It's part of like what motivates me and behind my why of why I do things, I'm getting into real estate, land real estate investing up here in Texas. So that's been a fun project that I'm working on.
Yeah.
I've got the podcast, The Cabin, that I just started. That's something I'm very passionate about, something that's very exciting. And then Athlete ER is a company that I'm working on with quite a crew. It's a global crew that we've got. Ultimately, what we're trying to do with that is help athletes find their full potential, both in their sport and in life in general. So it's a little bit of a process business with them, wherever they are in their season of life, in their journey.
Yeah.
But we've accumulated and we've grown this network of trainers and psychologists and dietitians, nutritionists, energy healers, different trainers, different types of coaches, like mindset and life coaches type things. But we're all former players. We're all people that work with professional athletes and have for a while, or college athletes, high school at any age athletes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so we come with a lot of wisdom and experience kind of from our journeys and how we've cultivated that into what we're all working on specifically. And we've come together as a team to create this business, Athlete ER, to basically help athletes wherever they are find their full potential, find that full optimization that they know they can reach, because we all have it within inside of us.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's just things that are holding us back.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it take those hurdles or those blockages are in our mind or in our heart. So with all the different resources and modalities that we use as a group, we can really get inside and help you figure out what that might be for you, and then to help you take your life and your sport to the next level. So it's just some things that I'm working on, very passionate about. And part of that story, like you alluded to, is what I've learned from my experience, and how can I take that, embody that, and serve and help people, with what I've learned about my experience so far.
Yeah, you obviously have a beautiful testimony that people need to hear, man, and just the whole journey and how injury and then COVID and all these situations, these obstacles that came in your way, but you still, it's like, what are you going to give out? When life squeezes you, what are you going to give out? Yeah. So okay, I want to rewind a little bit. So when you look back at your entirety of just where you're from your when you were a kid now, and what through athletics, what have you learned about yourself in the process?
It's a great question. I think if I could, there's been so many,
Yeah.
so many lessons,
Sure.
right? Just like so many people have experienced. I think the biggest one that has stood out to me, which is why I want to incorporate it in everything that I'm doing, moving forward, especially with Athlete ER,
Yeah.
is this idea that we can be extraordinary. Like we really can. We
Yeah.
have the capability. For me, that comes from God. That comes from my faith. It's not just because of myself.
Yeah.
It's something greater than myself that comes through me. But if we allow that, whatever that is for you, if you allow that to come through you, I believe we can do miraculous things with our lives. I think our potential is endless. I think
Yeah.
the ceiling to what we are capable of doing in these lives is so high. It might even be, infinite.
Yeah.
And there are ways you can tap into that inside of you, And for me, that's been like you talked about, like my childhood and growing up, and coming out of that town, becoming who I became, coming out of a place like Lakewood. That's just it's kind of unheard of, especially. And then the biggest thing in my life, the hardest thing I've ever had to do was convert from tight end to tackle in college, my sophomore year of college. I was eating almost 9,000 calories a day. I was constantly eating, and I wasn't eating McDonald's. You're eating chicken and rice and broccoli, so it's a chore. There was so much mentality that came with that, that I had to get over. So just eating alone was one of the hardest things I've had to do. I would go into a full-blown workout or practice full. I would go into a 2,500 calorie meal full from the last 4 snacks that I had during class. And then I was training twice a day on top of whatever we had with the team, on top of an average of 6 hours of class a day, plus the homework and study. So that was the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. And as I was going, and when it was kind of that process was over, and I was at 310 pounds later that season, talking to the trainers, the coaches, the strength trainers, everybody within that program, they're like, we've never seen that before. How did you do that? And I would just always, point up to God. It wasn't just me. I was putting in the work, but something was definitely through me. So, that alone is just like, you can't, that's an incredible thing to do. 44 pounds of muscle in 5.5 months. And it's like, I'm not bragging, because it's like, it's not me. It's something greater.
Supernatural.
Than myself. Right. But, the point is we are capable of amazing things in this life. And I believe we are called to do these things. I don't believe that, if everyone that's watching this, it's like, we're here for a reason. Like, you are here for a reason.
I agree.
We really are all here for some sort of purpose. And part of that process is kind of getting out of your own way and allowing what's to come, allowing becoming an offensive lineman when it's the last thing you want to do. Allowing that thing and going towards the fear, I think. Because we are put here to do extraordinary things. And be extraordinary people.
I agree with you, man. That's so awesome. It's so, like, when I'm hearing you talk, I'm like, I feel like, this straight line, this lightning bolt, like just going, this, that kind of, let's go, kind of thing. Because it really is about that, man. It's like, once you stop questioning God and you just start, moving your feet to the direction He wants you to go, then it's like, man, he presents you as like this amazing experience,
Right. It's a paradox, because you have to let go of that ego. And for me, and a word I've been thinking of a lot, and even the last 6 months, is just surrender. Surrendering my life. I'm not trying to control, everything so much.
Yeah, that's so crazy, because a friend of someone I know lost her husband recently, and person was telling me they were struggling with it, and I said, well, give it back to God because He gave it to you. You know, it's time to give it back to God because He gave it to you. And she was like, oh, she's like, yeah, you're right. And so it's this thing you're giving back to God, and because He gave it to you, and now He's saying there's more to this story, that it's not your story's not done yet, right? Your podcast. Share a little bit about your podcast and when it is, and when do you go on, when you shoot, when you record, and where's the way they can find you and everything like that.
The podcast is called The Cabin, with Dustin Stanton, and it's on Spotify, it's on Apple Podcasts, and I've always known that I was gonna do a podcast. For a long time. The idea of The Cabin came to me a couple years ago. It's a metaphorical concept or space based off of a real place. We had a cabin growing up in 2003. So I was in third grade when my parents bought a plot of land and built a cabin on Lake Wenatchee in Washington, central Washington. It was about 2 hours from where we grew up. And we spent, that was my childhood, with my brothers and I, friends, family, extended family. We would spend so much time so many weekends, at the cabin.
Yeah.
And it's that area, that cabin, meant so much to me and my family. It's one of my favorite places in the world. There's just an energy out there. And we love the cabin because, no cell phone service, right? You're just out there spending quality time with yourself and with people around you.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is some of the best conversations came up at the cabin.
You're
sitting around the campfire outside, and it's a beautiful mountain, central Washington evening. And those conversations was just profound. And my parents sold the cabin in 2016, but I wanted it to kind of live on. In this podcast,
Awesome.
And that's the premise behind it. And I release it weekly, every Monday.
Okay.
I release an episode, so it's one a week, and I have friends on. I have people in my network, people that I know from all walks of life come on, and we just talk about life. We had those profound conversations.
Yeah.
What is it all about? We'll never fully understand. It's not about understanding, but it's asking the questions, and it's thinking about our lives differently. And getting different perspectives. Outrospective. Right?
Outrospectives.
It's the same thing. And for me, what I really want listeners to understand is, Dustin Stanton as the former NFL player can have these conversations with whoever on a podcast, and from week to week you start to find that everyone's on the same journey. It doesn't matter who you are. Your path might look a little bit different. One person might be an electrician and one other person might be an NFL football player, but we're going through the same stuff. It really doesn't matter who you are, And I think if we can all learn that, we'd have so much more compassion and empathy and love in the world. And we realize we're all a lot more connected than we think we are, than it appears to be. And ultimately, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to help. That's really the only reason that I created the podcast. I do get into flow state when I'm doing it, and I have so much passion behind it. I love doing it myself. But really, it's I've been given this platform with the people that I know, the people in my circle, where we can have these conversations and talk about the most important things in life. And hopefully people can listen in and kind of understand and realize we're all not that different.
100%.
We're all on the path.
It sounds like that's a very intimate place, the cabin. From your childhood, the most innocent time of your life. When you're young and you're going to the cabin and with your family, and it's this very pureness to it too. So that's what I get essence of when you were talking. It's like, man, there's this level of pureness,
Yep.
And so that's cool, man. People want to get a hold of you to maybe reach out to you for some advice or anything like that, maybe speak for their organizations or whatever. Where can they get a hold of you at?
Yeah. I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I'm on Instagram.
Okay.
Dustin Stanton _. Pretty
Okay.
simple. But yeah, I'm out there. I've got all my emails connected to Instagram.
Okay.
I'm on LinkedIn. So those are the easiest ways. We're still doing some back end work on the website for Athlete ER. So that'll be up and running probably in a couple of weeks. So March, April, that'll be available. That's also on LinkedIn, so
Okay.
you can go check that out. And then the Cabin, the podcast is on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So yeah, and with Instagram, I just try to be as humble as I can. And
Yeah.
really that's a place where I try to tell my story as raw and as real as I can, and help with some inspiration along the way. So just a great place to connect and use it as a tool and resource. But yeah, man, thank you so much.
Dude, brother, it's good to have you. It's good to sit down and talk with you, hear your story and your journey. It's like very, it's inspiring. It causes some, I say when I'm introspectively learning from you, and now I have to assess where I'm at and kind of learn something from your journey and take the pieces, especially the part about, orange, you squeeze an orange, you expect orange juice to come out in life, same thing, Whenever I'm getting ready to shoot or something like that, sometimes I need motivation. So I'll put on the workout music that I use at the gym to let's go, hey, some AC/DC or whatever. So just to kind of build a bridge between those two. Yep. But man, it's a great conversation, great opportunity to get to know you better. And thank you for sharing your story. And we'll put this up on Instagram and all the places in the next few days. But guys, that's it for the Rush Outrospective. As I always say, have peace and light, and you remember that the ocean refuses no river.